Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back. What a pleasure it is to have you back in our quiet corner. I do hope the world has been kind to you, and that you find peace in our story. Tonight, our story uncovers a deep, buried mystery right beneath the roots of the valley. It is a tale of old-world treasures, patient cultivation, and the quiet magic that waits just beneath the surface of our everyday paths. As we walk out into the quiet, mist-shrouded fields, I invite you to lay down the thoughts of your day. Let your mind slow down to match the deep, patient rhythm of the earth, letting yourself drift into a state of total, untroubled peace. Before we start, take a slow, quiet moment now to let your body sink completely into the soft, welcoming support of your bed. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Release any lingering tightness in your hands, and feel the comforting, protective weight of your blankets wrapping around, comfy and snug. Let us share one slow, grounding breath together before the journey begins. Drawing in a deep, cool breath, holding it gently for a quiet, restful moment, and now releasing it with a long, peaceful sigh. Let your eyelids grow heavy as we step into the morning mist. The early autumn morning was held fast in a deep, breathless silence. A thick blanket of silver frost covered the valley dales, turning every blade of grass into a delicate, glittering crystal. Along the northern boundary of the common land, the air was crisp and completely still, smelling of damp limestone, frozen moss, and the clean, sharp scent of distant pine woods. Rosco and the bunnies had walked out early to help a beloved long-time neighbour clear a forgotten patch of old meadowland. Her name was Bertha, and she was a wonderfully large, elegant sow with a thick coat of silver-white bristles that shimmered like silk in the pale morning sun. Bertha was a creature of immense patience and dignity. She did not rush through her days. Instead, she moved through the fields with a slow, majestic grace, her large trotters pacing out a steady, comforting rhythm against the frozen earth. They were working near an ancient, crumbling limestone wall that had been built centuries ago by the valley's first settlers. The ground here was choked with wild briars and the deep, tangled roots of old dock plants, and it required a great deal of patient labour to clear it for the winter planting. While Rosco used a heavy iron spade to turn over the top layer of earth, his movements creating a steady, rhythmic thud against the earth, Bertha was in her absolute element. She was the finest garden maker in the parish. With a slow, focused dedication, she moves the earth with her snuffling truffleton snout. Her large, powerful nose was perfectly suited for the task, shifting the heavy clumps of dark loam with an effortless, graceful ease. Every few moments she would let out a low, contented snuffle, a soft puff of warm air that rose into the freezing morning sky like a tiny plume of white steam. The sun rose high enough to soften the top inch of frost. Bertha's snuffling snout caught a scent that made her pause. She lowered her head deeper into the rich black earth, her silver bristles brushing against the soil as she began to dig with a slow, deliberate focus. Deep beneath the twisted roots of a wild blackberry bush, her snout struck something completely solid and smooth. It wasn't the rough, fractured texture of a limestone rock, nor was it the soft, yielding wood of an old root. It was hard, cool, and perfectly rounded. With painstaking care, Bertha nudged the dark soil aside, backing up her slow step to let the bunnies see what she had found. Resting deep within the dark, crumbling belly of the earth was a huge, beautifully preserved, antique, salt-glazed stoneware onion pot. Berry and Caratina knelt down in the soft loam, their paws moving gently as they lifted the heavy earthenware jar out of its ancient resting place. The pot was a masterpiece of old-world pottery, crafted from thick, dense clay that had been fired with a traditional salt glaze, giving its surface a beautiful pebble texture that caught the low amber sunlight. The pot was specially designed for winter storage, its rounded sides pierced with a series of neat, teardrop-shaped ventilation holes to let the cool autumn air circulate. As Millie Moonbeam used a stiff horsehair brush to sweep away the caked black soil, she revealed intricate, beautifully preserved carvings etched all around the heavy rim. Someone centuries ago had carefully carved a sequence of celestial stars, crescent moons, and twisting ivy vines into the clay before it had gone into the kiln. Despite its long sleep beneath the roots of the meadow, the onion pot was entirely unbroken, capped tightly with a heavy, flat stoneware lid that had been sealed shut with a thick ring of dark protective beeswax. Rosco produced a small wooden-handled knife from his pocket, using the tip of the blade to gently scrape away the old brittle wax. With a soft, satisfying pop, the heavy lid lifted, releasing a sudden, surprising draught of air from within the dark jar. The interior didn't smell of old dust or damp earth. Instead, it carried an incredibly faint, elusive scent that smelled like wild thyme, dried lavender, and a subtle hint of sweet mineral iron. Berry reached his paw deep into the cool, dark belly of the pot. His fingers brushed against something soft and rustling. He carefully withdrew a single heavy packet of thick, yellowed wax paper, tied securely with a double knot of rough, dried hemp twine. With slow, deliberate fingers, Caratina untied the twine and folded back the stiff layers of wax paper. Resting in the center of the packet were 5 oversized, magnificent seeds. They were the size of small walnuts, but their appearance was entirely mystical. The seeds were completely smooth and iridescent, their outer shells shimmering with a faint pearlescent sheen that shifted beautifully from a deep, velvety plum purple to a soft twilight blue as the bunnies turned them in the sunlight. They looked less like traditional garden seeds and more like polished river stones pulled from a dream. Tucked beneath the shimmering seeds was a tiny square of faded linen parchment. Written upon it, in the elegant faded iron gall ink of a scribe from long ago, was a simple, intriguing instruction. Plant only when the moon is silver, and bide your time. Bertha leaned her large head closer, her snuffling truffleton snout giving the iridescent seeds a gentle, curious sniff. She let out a soft, approving puff of air, her dark eyes shining with a quiet, knowing wisdom. They all looked up at the sky, realizing that the moon would rise full and silver over the high dales that very night. By the time the sun had fully dipped behind the high western dales, the valley had slipped into an extraordinarily deep, breathless twilight. The pale blues of the afternoon dissolved into a rich, velvety shade of indigo, and a dense, creeping ground mist began to rise from the riverbanks, swirling lazily around the base of the ancient stone walls. Rosco, Bertha, and the bunnies made their way back to the cleared patch of meadowland, their lanterns casting long, swinging pools of warm amber light across the frosted grass. The air was cold, so crisp and still that the sound of their slow footsteps seemed to echo softly off the limestone rocks. Right as the church clock in the distant village chimed the midnight hour, the full moon cleared the mountain ridge. It was a spectacular luminous coin of pure silver, casting a bright, ethereal glow across the field that turned the silver bristles of Bertha's coat into a shimmering cloak of light. Bertha led the way to the very centre of the cleared soil. With great reverence, she moved the earth with her snuffling truffleton snout, creating 5 neat, perfectly spaced hollows in the dark loam. The earth here smelled rich, cool, and old. Berry stepped forward, holding the thick wax paper packet. With slow, gentle fingers, he placed one iridescent twilight blue seed into the bottom of each hollow. Under the direct rays of the silver moon, the pearlescent shells of the seeds seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light, warming the dark soil directly around them. Before covering the seeds, Rosco and the bunnies stood in a quiet circle, joining their paws together, while Bertha stood with her head bowed low, her breathing slow and steady in the dark. Together, their voices rising in a soft, melodic whisper that drifted into the misty night, they recited the ancient rhyme written on the back of the faded parchment. Deep in loam where shadows bide, hide the silver, turn the tide. By the moonwell soft and still, let the quiet magic fill. Bide your time beneath the frost, wake the wonder long since lost. The moment the final word faded into the quiet air, Caratina and Millie Moonbeam gently scooped the rich black soil back over the hollows, tucking the seeds safely into the belly of the earth. As the last clump of earth settled, a remarkable change came over the patch of meadow. The bitter biting frost that had been creeping across the soil suddenly halted. A faint, wispy amber mist began to rise from the covered earth, smelling faintly of dried cloves and warm rain. For several yards around the planting site, the ground became completely thawed and warm to the touch, as if the earth itself had drawn a long, deep breath and settled down, comfortable and cozy. In the valley, true magic does not rush. It moves with the slow, patient passing of the changing seasons. Over the next weeks, while the rest of the common land surrendered to the freezing bite of early winter, the tiny patch of meadow cleared by Bertha's snuffling snout became a place of quiet, impossible wonder. The bunnies walked out each afternoon to check on the progress. While the surrounding grass turned a dull, frosted brown, the hidden seeds began to stir beneath the loam. First came the shoots. They did not look like ordinary onion greens. Instead, 5 huge, twisting stalks of a deep, velvety emerald hue broke through the soil. The stalks grew with a powerful looping grace, curling upward like the elegant hand-wrought ironwork of an old garden gate. Their surfaces were thick and ribbed, covered in a fine silvery down that trapped the morning dew like hundreds of tiny diamonds. After a few weeks, the fantastic bulbs themselves began to swell, pushing their way proudly above the soil line. They grew to a large, magnificent size, far larger than any root vegetable the valley folk had ever seen. They were completely multi-layered and translucent, shaped like perfect teardrop globes. As they matured under the watchful eye of Bertha, who visited them each morning with a soft, proud snuffle, the thick, papery outer skins of the bulbs turned a shimmering pearl-white colour. They were not solid. Rather, they had a unique mystic quality that made them look like hand-blown glass lanterns. As the sun set each evening, the inner layers of the bulbs began to glow from within with a soft, steady silver light. Eventually, the cleared patch of meadow was completely transformed. At midnight, the 5 great moon lantern bulbs illuminated the ancient limestone wall with a gentle, calming radiance, casting long, peaceful shadows across the blue moss and creating a sanctuary of warmth and quiet beauty in the heart of the freezing valley. When the night of the harvest arrived, the 5 large globes stood proud in the center of the clearing, their pearl-white skins throwing a gentle, milky radiance over the old limestone wall. Bertha stood at the edge of the patch, her silver bristles catching the pale illumination, her breathing a soft, steady sigh in the winter air. It was time for the gathering. Rosco knelt into the warm soil, his hands sinking beneath the first great bulb with heartfelt gentleness. He didn't need the iron spade. The earth relaxed its grip willingly, releasing the large moon lantern bulb with a soft, yielding sigh of shifting loam. He lifted it into the crisp night, its internal silver light pulsing gently against his tweed coat. Caratina and Millie Moonbeam reached out, their paws sliding over the smooth, translucent outer layers. With a slow, deliberate movement, Caratina caught the edge of the topmost papery skin and peeled it back. The dry tissue came away with a clean, satisfying rustle, like the turning of an ancient parchment page. The moment the inner layer was exposed to the open night, a mystical aroma drifted out from the heart of the bulb, spreading across the meadow in a thick, invisible wave. It was a fragrance of pure, absolute comfort. It carried the rich scent of slowly simmering garden greens, sweet wild thyme crushed between fingertips, and the deep roasted warmth of a midwinter root feast. As the wind carried the aroma over the hedgerows, a deep stillness settled over the entire village. The whistling reeds along the riverbank seemed to quiet their song, and the small field mice nesting in the stone wall let out long, deep sighs, instantly tucking their noses into their tails. Just breathing in the scent brought a wonderful leaden weight to settle over the bunnies' limbs. Their shoulders drooped, and their eyelids grew heavy and peaceful under the silver moon. They carefully harvested the remaining 4 bulbs, cradling them like fragile glass lanterns, and nested them gently into the deep, dark belly of the antique stoneware pot Bertha had unearthed. With the heavy lid replaced and sealed, they began their slow, sleepy way back to the cottage, the wondrous aroma still lingering in their clothes like a beautiful promise. The walk back to Rosehip Cottage was carried out in a beautiful, meditative silence, the swing of Roscoe's lantern pacing out their journey across the frosted lanes. When they finally pushed open the heavy timber door, the kitchen welcomed them with its familiar dry embrace, the black cast-iron stove radiating a steady protective heat. They placed the antique onion pot on the counter, removing the lid to let that magnificent, soothing aroma fill the farmhouse kitchen. Moving slowly, Rosco took a heavy silver-bladed knife and cut a single thick crescent slice from one of the glowing silver bulbs. The interior was completely crisp and clear, filled with a sweet, shimmering moisture. Rosco dropped the slice into a heavy cast-iron pot, adding a splash of fresh spring water and a generous pour of rich, sweet oat milk from the pantry. As the mixture began to simmer over the embers, it transformed into a thick, velvety harvest cream. The liquid bubbled with a low murmur, releasing a cloud of thick steam that smelled of country hearths and complete safety. Millie Moonbeam sliced a fresh loaf of soft barley bread the crust giving way with a gentle crunch to reveal a tender, warm crumb. They poured the steaming cream into 4 deep stoneware bowls, sitting down in their familiar circle right before the crimson glow of the hearth. They ate in blissful quiet. The flavor was pure, concentrated rest, a deep, savory sweetness that spread a heavy, comforting relaxation right down to their tumblingtons from the very first spoonful. With every slow bite, the freezing outer world seemed to recede further and further into the distance, until the cottage felt like the only sanctuary left in the valley. The rich cream washed away the last traces of the day's labor, leaving their limbs feeling wonderfully heavy and still. The bunnies reached for their thick, heather-purple wool blankets. They wrapped the plush, heavy fabric tight around their shoulders, pulling the comforting weight right up to their chinnigans, and sat directly back into their deep, high-backed armchairs by the fire. The chairs cradled their tired frames perfectly, holding them in a soft, unshakable embrace. On the center of the kitchen table, the remaining moon bulbs cast a soft, steady silver glow across the room, just like the stars outside. With the quiet, rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock, they let themselves drift away. As you let your own eyes close fully now, and you sink deeper into the absolute comfort of your own bed, let these gentle thoughts wrap around you. My day is beautifully complete, and I can rest now. My hands are still, and my mind is completely at ease. I am surrounded by warmth, safety, and quiet comfort. I give myself full permission to let go of the world. I am perfectly protected, and all is taken care of. I am ready to drift into a deep, unbroken sleep. Let the slow, lazy pulse of the night carry you deeper and deeper into the quiet dark. The seeds are grown. The harvest is gathered. The valley is fast asleep, and you are entirely safe. All was snug. All was well. Night-night.